Tim's on my feet, stomping out the negativity. Everybody not a friend of me. Spread the love, still I move deliberately. Bully face on, but the smile be heavenly. Brooklyn girls, so they love the energy, love sincerity. So I take the liberty to take them on a journey lyrically through hallways and alleys. Dark days.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Next Chapter, where we discuss shades of gray. I am one of your hosts, Minister Kat, aka KittyRose, and as you can see, I am by myself once again this week, but I'm not really by myself because the wonderful Miss Pippa, if you got a chance to see last week's show, guess what? She's joining us again. So let's everyone give a warm virtual welcome to Miss Pippa Hurst. Hey, Pippa. Welcome back. How are you doing this week?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me back, Kat.
Yes, you were so interesting last week that I was told from my production team that even though we had a topic, we end up really just talking about your story more than the topic. So thank you for coming back.
I have a tendency to do that.
But I want to talk more about your story, and that's what today's topic is about. Today's topic, or the topic of the week, is an interesting one. I know I say that every week, but this really is interesting because it's happening right now in real-time life. So this week's topic of the week is the hoodie, with a question mark, and understanding human bias when it comes to this concept or stereotype of the hoodie. Now, the reason why I wanted to have this conversation is because when I met Miss Pippa, she told me an interesting, kind of sad, kind of poignant reason that people have their feelings in regards to when they see folks in a hoodie. Pippa, would you share with us your story of someone in a hoodie?
Sure. So before this whole nomadic adventure lifestyle started, I was assaulted and robbed on the street outside my home by a young man wearing a hoodie. And this young man also happened to be black. And so it fit the stereotype that is perpetuated time and time again in media. And I don't know, it's just perpetuated as this dangerous black man in a hoodie. And I spoke with some of my white female friends, even black women as well, after this happened to me, and they all said that they crossed the street to avoid young black men wearing hoodies because they are fearful in situations like that. So, yeah.
And when you shared that story, you know, and it's sad because when the concept or when something was told to you that you felt like I can't even tell this story because am I now adding to the perpetration or to the stereotype of the black man in a hoodie? And I was like, but that's not going into a stereotype. That is a fact that you actually were mugged by a black person who wore a hoodie. And when you talked about being warned or having this conversation with other women, you know, at the end of the day, when we're all kind of taught that if we look or a situation looks suspicious to us, then we should cross the street or hold our purse or be more mindful. But is the stereotype or is the stigma in regards to the black man in a hoodie and not just dangerous people or dangerous men or a dangerous man who might be a white man in a hoodie? Would the woman still cross the street? Would the woman still be mindful? And that made me start to think like, I just recently, I think I was telling you, watching Ozark. Yeah. And when I was watching Ozark, one of the characters in the show went to go kill someone. And the character happened to be a small little white woman. And she puts on a hood, you know what I'm saying? So that she doesn't get seen by the cameras. So for any criminal who puts the hood on so they can avoid being seen from cameras, is now the concept of criminals wearing a hood to protect themselves from cameras, has that now trickled down to now we thinking that every black man or every black person or every young black boy with a hoodie is a dangerous situation to walk away from?
Well, yeah, and I mean, it's not even just the hoodie. it's the skin color. I hate to say it, but in conversations I've had with some of my guests on my podcast, one in particular, he is a pioneer of the art scene in Las Vegas, and he had a studio in the arts district there. He'd been there for years. Even had a key to the staff washrooms, and he told me that there are people that come into that environment and are fearful towards him and are warning their daughters and people that are around them to watch out for that guy. He's had women clutch their purses behind when he's standing behind them at the bank. And he's not a threat. So why do people feel that he's a threat? He's not even wearing a hoodie. And he and I had the conversation about what we talked about last week on the show in the diner. He didn't feel he'd be able to sit in a diner simply because of the color of his skin. He was a black man, he would have been asked to leave. So again, it's everybody has a different perception and a different idea, but these are some of the experiences he's actually had. I had another guest express to me that he doesn't go out wearing a hoodie. He's very mindful of when he decides to wear a hoodie, which he refers to. Very functional, very comfortable piece of clothing, but because of the color of his skin, he feels he needs to be more mindful about when he wear that.
Listen to that. He feels he needs to be more mindful. I wasn't able to find too many videos that actually talked about the concept of the stereotype with the hoodie, but I was able to find a video that talked about understanding human bias. So let's go to this video and look at the first clip, and then we'll talk about it and dissect it and get some thoughts on it.
I mean, I know we're not shooting people down in the street, but I'm saying that the same stereotypes and prejudices that fuel those kinds of tragic incidents are in us. We've been schooled in them as well. I believe that we can stop these types of incidents, these Fergusons, from happening by looking within and being willing to change ourselves. So I have a call to action for you. There are 3 things that I want to offer us today to think about as ways to stop Ferguson from happening again. 3 things that I think will help us reform our images of young black men. 3 things that I'm hoping will not only protect them, but will open the world so that they can thrive. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine our country embracing young black men, seeing them as part of our future, giving them that kind of openness, that kind of grace we give to people we love? How much better would our lives be? How much better would our country be? Let me just start with number 1. We got to get out of denial. We don't need, stop.
We got to get out of denial.
Goosebumps.
She also mentioned how would it look if our country would embrace. What I found a problem with that is, again, why I'm doing this show. We live in a society that we say or embrace as ours, but we live in a society that constantly are putting these stereotypes or biases in front of us to have us think about these things in regards or indifferent to other things. If we would, what she said, the willingness to change ourselves and our own thinking. When I looked up the definition to having a biased attitude, understanding human bias. Bias is a preference in favor of or against a person, group of people, or thing. These initial human reactions, which are often unconscious, are rooted in inaccurate information or reason and are potentially harmful because biases are also a part of being human. I know as a parent, especially a parent as a daughter, you know, I've given my daughter pepper spray, and I'm always telling her to be mindful of her surroundings and be mindful when she's walking the street. But it's never really to the point of watch out for those black kids or watch out for those Spanish kids. It's a general statement to be careful. But that's one parent talking to one child. How about those that live in a society or taught to be in a society that if you see a bunch of white guys who might be, what they call it, catcalling, that they're not dangerous to walk past. But if we see a group of black kids or black men, we'll hold our purse or we'll cross the street. How do we get past the feeling of safety when it comes to how we look at people outside of our race and even in our own race?
That's part of what has led me to do what I'm doing right now and have these conversations with people in the Black community across America. When I bring up my story and I make reference to the Black man in a hoodie as a white woman, I understand that that can be very triggering, as it is, it's a racial bias. And I'm using it as a means to explain what happened to me and also show perhaps that this is not the case, because after that happened to me, I simply by chance befriended a number of young Black men, many of them in hoodies. I wound up in the boxing community in Las Vegas doing a documentary for three months. And I was surrounded by young Black men wearing hoodies who punched people in the face, which is what the guy that mugged me did to me. So, and I had no fear around that situation. So, and I've met young men who have expressed to me the anger that comes from being a 14-year-old young Black male wearing a hoodie on the street and having women cross the street to avoid them and not understanding why that's happening. The anger that would, and so then all of these things that we're doing, these behaviors that we have towards other people are perpetuating certain situations in the future. And that anger that is created or whatever the reason is. Because my question when I came out of that situation with this young man is, why did this person feel the need to do this?
Wait, say that part again. Why did it what?
Why did the young man who assaulted me feel the need to do it?
But do you think that he assaulted you? Do you think that he would not have assaulted me if he saw me and had the opportunity to rob me?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm just asking the question because whether it was racially motivated, male, female,
right.
I talked with one guest in my 11th guest in my last episode of one of my podcasts about this, and he also brought to my attention the fact that sometimes it's a matter of choice, and if you're left with very few choices, sometimes that's what you need to do to get what you need.
Yeah, but again, before we go to our PSAs, that's the myth that they're not another race, i.e. the white race, that don't feel moments of desperation where they go out and rob and mug people and put a hoodie on to protect them from being seen. On that note, let's go to our PSAs.
Got you.
Part-time job, full-time hustle, all-time shero to all of us. You nurture, we listen. You teach, we thrive. You lift our spirits, but we've got to lay down the truth. It's time for you, our shero, to stretch for the stars. A free online chat can give you the personalized tips you need to start boosting your retirement savings today. Start saving more for retirement so you can feel prepared and live your life to the fullest. Visit aceyourretirement.org.
You know, a lot of people say, when you're going somewhere, you don't want to look back. But I beg to differ. For her to see her father celebrate his graduation, it's the best feeling in the world. I can't lie and say it was easy. But sometimes you just have to stop everything and take it in. I looked at everything in a different light. I realized it started with me going back and getting my high school diploma.
Once we know and accept we have bias, we can begin to recognize our own patterns of thinking. I shared that statement because it comes back to us and our thinking about what we're being fed. And if what we're being fed is that we have to be more mindful of another race than another, what that also does is it allows for the other races to enhance their criminal behavior because no one's watching them or no one's looking for them to do wrong. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, again, that's part of why I'm having the conversations I'm having with people, is to break that down and break that stereotype down and show that that's not the case, and that we, especially as white people, really need to take a step back and ask ourselves, why do I feel the need to clutch my purse in line at the bank when, you know, this beautiful artist named Dre is standing behind me?
But
Why
you're
am
not
I
having that bias by yourself. That's the point that I'm making. We have that same bias. I'm sure that any black woman would also walk across the street if she saw a young black kid in a hoodie.
Right. Okay.
But I'm gonna cross the street if I see a young, suspicious white kid in a hoodie too, because y'all the ones that's shooting up high schools and shit. So what the fuck? You know, I don't hear those stories of black boys shooting up schools, shooting up supermarkets. All I hear is these white boys, you know what I'm saying, that are doing this. So the stereotype or the danger.
Look at people like Kyle Rittenhouse, though.
Okay.
I mean, he went and he got off. He got, you know, like, this is where the difference is that, you know, the young black men are put in prison for indeterminate amounts of time for nothing, and these white guys can shoot and kill people. So again, there's those are, I mean, that's a much deeper issue that I'm not really prepared to get into at this point. But yeah, you know what I loved about that TED Talk that you just shared? It was the first time I was looking at it, and the part that gave me goosebumps was right before she gives number one, and she talks about what kind of country and what kind of world could we be living in if we gave our young black men the respect and the chances that they deserve. I don't know her exact words, but that just gave me goosebumps, because I think that's a lot of the problem. We are trained, conditioned, it's perpetuated in media, that to believe that the young black man is a dangerous person. And it's just not the case. No. And they're no more dangerous than, as you were saying, the young white men in hoodies, the young Asian men. We can go through a whole list of descriptors, but unfortunately, that stereotype has specifically been created, and it's put towards the young black man. And yes, that actually happened. So it wasn't just a stereotype; it was a reality for me. But it's a reality that has led me to want help in some form to remove that stereotype, to broaden people's perspectives.
And that's why I wanted to talk about it, because in your case, it's not a stereotype. In your case, it's a fact. But if that's your fact, then that's other people's fact as well, who are victims or victors of criminal behavior from whomever is in that mindset that they want to take something from someone else. But the bias part is what we're trying is what we're going to change, because the same teachings that I give my daughter or daughters or women friends is the same teachings that I would do whether they were black or they were white. Because the one thing that was mentioned when me and you were having this conversation is Alethea talked about, yes, we have this bias when it comes to color and danger, but then what about the bias as women that we have to fear all the time because our pussy is always put on display as a threat? So whether it's a black guy or a white guy, we always got to figure out, do they like us for us, or are they just trying to fuck us?
Right.
So
what did Alethea say? It's the most wanted thing on the planet?
She sure did. She said the woman's vagina is the most wanted thing. So if that little black boy wanted your purse, you know what I'm saying? So before we elaborate some more, I wanted to go back to that video because she kind of ends it with a way that kind of resonated with me on how we can move forward with this concept. So let's go to the second video, well, the same video, but the second part, and then we'll come back to elaborate.
Who do you trust? Who are you afraid of? Who do you implicitly feel connected to? Who do you run away from? I'm going to tell you what we have learned. The implicit association test, which measures unconscious bias. You can go online and take it. 5 million people have taken it. Turns out our default is white. We like white people. We prefer white. What do I mean by that? When people are shown images of black men and white men, we are more quickly able to associate that picture with a positive word, that white person with a positive word, than we are when we are trying to associate positive with a black face. And vice versa. When we see a black face, it's easier for us to connect black with negative than it is white with negative. 70% of white people taking that test prefer white. 50% of black people taking that test prefer white. You see, we were all outside when the contamination came down. What do we do about the fact that our brain automatically associates?
I heard the saying, white is always right.
You know, and I recently used the word blacklisted to describe my actress friend who was blacklisted back in the 50s. And I researched that word, and there is actually a whitelisted as well. So the blacklisted is meant to imply bad, and the whitelisted is meant to imply good. So we're being conditioned from all sides here. Like even the use of our language that becomes the norm, and we don't even think about the origins of it. I was going to say something about the cat. I let the cat out of the bag the other day, and I actually went to look it up to make sure I was using it in the right context. And I read something about the racial connotation behind that, which dates back to slavery and the whip, which were used, which had nine pieces of leather to whip the slaves. And that was when they took the cat out of the bag, that was when a slave was going to be beaten and abused. So cat out of the bag is also something, I mean, it's everywhere, cat. It's cat. You know, it these things that we're not even aware of. And I've said stuff on the podcast, and I'm going to apologize now because it's been brought to my attention that some of the things I have discussed with people on the podcast, and the fact that I've said it, has been offensive. And it's not my intention to offend. I'm still learning. I'm just hoping that move forward, I can make the adjustments that are needed and have conversations like I'm having with you today to help, you know, bring people together. And I'm still on the learning curve here. So it's painful. It can be really painful because I don't like to hurt people, you know. If it's causing offense and it's hurting people, I'm a people pleaser. I love people. My intentions are really good, but I do understand that it's not always the way. So,
and it's not just you. You know what I'm saying? The video clearly said that there's an unconscious bias, even in our community, where we're even preferring white being right or white being better. You know what I'm saying? So it's not just your mentality or your thinking that has to be adjusted. It's the thinking as a whole, because we're all kind of trapped into this thinking that the black is what's dangerous, you know, and it's so funny because culturally, you know, and this is like my come to Jesus moment, you know, we as people, God's people, Christian people, I remember there's a scripture, there's a saying or story when Jesus' apostles asked him, you know, how will we be able to tell your people? How will we know who your people was? And he didn't name a religion. He didn't name a race. He didn't name a creed. He said by the love that they show you. So that is the identifying mark that we're supposed to have as humans in living this spiritual plane or the spiritual life of having a connection of love, and then that connection of love will kind of take away these stereotypes that's being almost made to brainwash us, to once again keep us separate, once again to keep us disconnected, thinking that we should be more mindful and wary of this particular race over this race, when at the end of the day, we need to unfortunately be wary about everything on our surroundings. You know what I'm saying? Like a young black boy with a hoodie is not going to make me any less nervous than a white kid with a hoodie if it all looks sketchy. You know what I'm saying? And if I'm walking where I'm oblivious to my surroundings, that's not being responsible. That's not falling into a stereotype. That is taking ownership of my own safety to anyone and everyone that I might come encounter with. So that was my Jesus moment. Now I'm going to ask the audience for the favorite part of the show that I don't like, which is to follow, share, and subscribe, because this is a conversation I want you all to elaborate on. I want to know your thoughts. What do you think about the bias or the unconscious bias in regards to stereotypes, in particular to the one when it comes to people of color in the hoodie? Should we be scared of every black man that wears a hoodie? Where, again, like Pippa talked about, the hoodie being one of the most comfortable pieces of clothing out there. Or is it really just an unconscious bias that we have to strip away, break down altogether, and not allow the powers that be to continue to dictate how we move and how we treat each other?
Amen, sister.
Yes. So on that note, please follow Miss Pippa. She has a podcast that is very illuminating that she does on a weekly basis that I encourage everyone to check out, because I think another part of breaking down the stereotype is that she's not allowed to have a perspective as a white woman, or I'm not allowed to have a perspective as a black woman. So we need to hear our different platforms, hear our different scenarios, so that we can all realize that we are all the same, because we are all just humans and God's beautiful creations, and we're all going through these next chapters of our lives. So once again, I am your host, Minister Kat, aka KittyRose. I'm joined by my beautiful guest host, Miss Pippa Hurst, and we are the next chapter, where we come to you every week discussing shades of gray. We will see you guys next week. Please tune in and don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, be safe and stay focused.
Thanks for having me, Kat.
From 1 to 5 when COVID hit the block and we had to stay inside. Tough love is all I know, so be gentle with my soul. Learn to navigate winters with no coat. If you never been cold, you never been broke. Hustle 24/7 just to stay afloat. So New York, like dollar pizza in the cold. Wild shit, that real life grit from the heart of the city is as hard as it gets. This that New York shit, that real life grit from the heart of the city is as hard as it gets. This that New York shit, that real life grit from the heart of the city is as hard as it gets. This that New York shit, that real life grit from the heart of the city is as hard as.
When I was growing up, my mom was extremely tidy. We were trained to put things back where we got them from. One day, when I walked into my mom's house, I felt like I walked to someone else's house. There was stuff everywhere, and just growing up the way I grew up, and to see this transition was very alarming.
When Sean talked to me, it was a wake-up call, and that's when I went to the doctor.